What's up, founders and investors? Welcome back to Next Round Ready. I'm your host, Chris. Today we have Ben from Ouro Biomedical. And I talked to him a couple months ago, but we had to redo this conversation because Ben has told me there's been some advancements in the company, some progress has been made. So I'm super excited. Ben, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Chris. I'm really excited to be here.
So I know a little bit of background on you and how you got to this point, but let the people know how you got to this point with your company.
Yeah, so the story of Ouro Biomedical starts with me as a little kid. I was lucky enough to be raised by a four-generation household up in Alaska. My great-grandmother was the oldest woman in the state at 111 years old at one point. And so early on, I was fascinated by how and why we age the way we do, what can we do about it? And so we spun out Aura with the idea of looking and figuring out what kind of compounds we could find that no one else had looked at that might impact the way we age. So what we settled on was this idea of looking at aging as a way to tackle some of the common injuries and ailments that patients experience. So right now, what Aura is focused on is developing cancer care therapies that improve patients' T cells, make them younger, so make them better able to resist the necessary but often harmful treatment from radiation and chemotherapy.
That's incredible. And I think cancer is one of those things that when you say you're solving that problem, people's ears immediately perk up like, huh? Like, what are you doing there? Like, it
Yeah.
draws a lot of interest.
And it's interesting to me as a founder, we started with these big ideas, right? Longevity, health, even space medicine and making astronauts healthier up there. But what we found is we needed to figure out a way to help people in the next year. How do you take your big picture idea and funnel it down and get the MVP that is going to help people in the short term? And so this project actually started with a collaboration with the Air Force and Space Force that they funded looking at astronaut health. And we looked at radiation resilience from our molecules. And we were thinking about what's the good that we could do with these first couple of hit compounds. It turns out there's this big need. 10 million patients a year get radiation therapy. 95% of them end up getting radiation-associated skin dermatitis. This is a huge unmet need that we can actually tackle.
That is incredible. So I have to ask, why are you the founder to solve this specific problem and really build this company in this specific market?
Yeah, so, I would say the reason for that, I'm a longtime inventor, tinker, and problem solver. Like, really, problem solving is the way that I think about being a founder in the most important context. What you need to look for, I think, in a founder is the ability to juggle disparate fields. You need someone that can talk business with the business guys, science with your science team, and then product with the people that are actually going to be taking it to the patients. And what you're looking for is a generalist. Like, you need someone that can tackle all these different things. And so my career has been spent building new tech and figuring out a way to make things work. And it's that passion for new problems and knocking them down one by one that I bring to the role of CEO here at Aura.
That's interesting. So what was kind of your aha moment where you knew you needed to, like you said earlier, bring things down into one specific focus versus trying to solve all the biggest problems that are out there?
Yeah, I heard the phrase from a friend of ours saying, startup's big problem is trying to boil the ocean. I think that was Ron. And what we found, so we spun out like a lot of biotechs with a platform in about 23. And that was just past the point at which platforms were really hot in the investment space. And so we were generating all of this exciting data. And I looked at it and, really had to take a long look in the mirror and say, how are we going to actually get this to someone? And the way that I think about it is we as a field, and this is speaking across a lot of people that study aging biology, are really looking for our first big point on the scoreboard, a biotech taking a therapy from longevity medicine, getting it to market. And what separates Aura and my thinking from the rest of the field is the thinking about longevity in the perspective of you lose your ability to resist damage and heal from injury as you get older. And so what I care about is not going after, I say that facetiously, I don't care about going after Alzheimer's or cardiovascular, these big, complex, multiple genetic diseases that are going to be so hard to untangle. I care about looking at a little bit of tissue and making it respond to injury as if it's younger. And that's
Wow.
what really was kind of our aha moment.
Wow, that's such a big thing. It's a really, really big picture focus. It's like almost polarizing in a way where I can picture when you tell this to people, they kind of look at you like you get those crazy looks like, huh? How are you doing
Yeah,
this?
all the time. And it's interesting too, because, I think about there are other folks in the longevity field, and I don't want to cast big aspersions, but there's snake oil out there,
Yeah.
right? And there's issues with it, and we as a field have to work together to bring the best science and medical directives forward that are actually grounded in real world patient outcomes and not just sell another antioxidant pill to people, right? Like, we want to do a good job here of really improving patient lives. And that takes a lot of diligence, and it takes things doing the right way.
So let's talk traction. What are some of the signals that you're most proud of right now?
Yeah. So I mentioned and I alluded to it earlier, but we had this, real inflection point where in about a year and change ago, we received SBIR. So I'm sure your listeners all know, but that's the main route that government funds innovation across the biotech and tech sectors. We received an SBIR from the U.S. Air Force and U.S. Space Force jointly to look at radiation resilience in the context of longevity therapeutics. And so that let us spin out our first kind of targeted pipeline at this question and at this problem. Let us take our best compounds that extended animal lifespan and see if they improve the animal's recovery rate after radiation. And it turns out that there was a really strong correlation there, and our best molecules worked across both fields. We also received another SBIR from the NIH, and that was really focused on upgrading and improving the robotic platform and infrastructure that underlies our actual high throughput screening process.
Wow.
So in terms of other traction, the two other things I would highlight, we've had an incredible experience as a scrappy pre-seed startup going out and working with interested scientists and community members. And actually, I don't know when this podcast will air, but in the next week, we're going to be announcing a $1,000 philanthropic donation that's going to let us do an open access project where we're going to screen a huge amount of interesting and consumer relevant compounds and then make that data available for everyone. Yeah, and then the last bit is talking with other people and interested parties in the space. We actually got a little bit of consumer feedback recently where a friendly group went to the largest hospital chain in one of our western states and asked them to review a whole host of biotech proposals proposing new therapies for their patients. And out of all of those, they selected Ouro Biomedicals as the most patient relevant and interesting to follow up on. And this is specifically the cancer care co-treatment radiation therapy.
That's so dope, man.
I'm so excited.
And I can tell that the traction for you is different than most companies. Like, you're not just chasing users or a dollar sign. I think the impact and traction here is the people being impacted. Do you have anything specific in terms of someone that has been able to get the company on hands-on and stuff? Like, and I mean, really, where are you going? Are you trying to work with the hospitals mainly or individuals? Like, how is this going to work?
Yeah, so what this will be, our first product is, like, our customer base is actually the medical oncologists that work with patients undergoing cancer care, and they'll be prescribing our first therapy to those patients. So really, medical professionals is our first, following FDA approval, our real first consumer base when they're getting it to patients. And so what that means is we actually have to do a lot of diligence in working with them and building a network so that we are developing a product that they're going to want to deploy to their patients. And so this is kind of customer discovery along that front. They also really care about efficacy and safety data. And so that's our kind of big push right now. And our next set of milestones is going to be taking it and moving it into more complex mouse and even mini pig models, showing that we can get the best possible outcome for patient skin in these samples.
So I have to ask you this. Are you already going to market, or are you kind of figuring out what the next step is? Because it sounds like you're already out there, man.
I try to be. So, I try and think like 3 or 4 steps ahead. And sometimes that means having conversations earlier than we would imagine we would actually be. So, talking with hospitals now while we're still getting data ready for FDA approval. So we're actually at the stage where Ouro's pre-seed right now. So we're currently, we'll talk about this later, we're currently raising the funds to take this and actually look at these best-in-class molecules in some more complex mammals. So mini pig and mouse. and do these real resiliency studies. We've seen it work in simple animals, and we've seen it work in like human skin cells and skin tissues in a petri dish. We need to go and test a real world application now.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the real test and prove it kind of area. You got to get out there, get in people's faces. I love this, man. I love what you're doing. So let's get into a little bit of the fundraising angle.
Yeah.
Why do you want to raise now? What's the big difference between now and last year or 2 years from now?
Yeah. So the way that I look at it is I'm constantly thinking about our next priced round, which is going to be our seed round, raised probably late this year, early next year. And me as a founder, I want to really go for the biggest possible valuation that I can that's reasonable.
Yeah.
On that raise, because that raise is going to be what gets us through the rest of human trials or even into some of our clinical work, right? It's going to be prepping our drugs, getting it through the FDA, working with a bunch of those processes. We actually have to raise like about 6-7 million later this year, beginning of next year. And so what I want to do is I want to make sure I've got all my ducks in a row with proof of principle, show efficacy, show early toxicology, and all these things that the FDA is going to care about, so that I can talk to investors next year and be like, hey, I've got a slam dunk. And so right now, I'm raising to run those. Those studies aren't nothing, but they're at least, I don't have to raise several million for it. So I'm only raising about 700,000 right now. Depending on the right investor, maybe we'd push it to $1 million, but it's that's just to round off to a nice whole number, more than it.
That makes sense. That makes sense. You sound like you don't want to rush or you're not too desperate. That's really good, because I hear, now that I talk to founders so much, it's usually the opposite, where they're like, I'm trying to raise as much as I can right this very moment. And it's like, are you really ready for that? Or do you just want to do it to say you did?
Yeah, I want to do it at the right time and right place. And we were lucky enough, we have got some incredible angels that came in early and came in on our friends and family round that we did in the beginning of 24. And, when I needed to go and raise some money for a couple more basically contracted out research, they were like, yeah, that sounds reasonable and we trust you. And they wrote me a check, which was great. So we're currently about a third of the way through what we're trying to raise. So we're still out there and still going after stuff.
So are you trying to work with, or would you be more interested in working with the investors who just give you the cash and get out the way? Or do you want somebody that's hands-on, that's going to help you out and stuff?
Oh, I want hands-on. So I'm in an interesting place where, I'm a first-time founder. So I have so much to learn every single day. But I got the gumption to do it. What I'm looking for is investors that want to come in early and want to work with me to help me build the best possible company I can. So I look out 2 years from now, and we're raising our seed, then we're raising our Series A. Biotech investment is longer term than just tech, right? There's a lot more regulation.
It is
longer, right? Like the reality is, right now I need excited visionaries, people that want to work with me. In a year and a half, 2 years, I need to be talking to kind of the blue chip venture firms that do a lot of biotech investment, that partner with pharma, because that's the sort of money that I'll be needing to raise to do a phase 2, phase 3 clinical trial.
Yeah. And I know those trials can kind of add up too, and that's just part of it. Now, I want to ask you a few more questions before we close, specifically about your vision. Like, what does success for this company looks like in 3 to 5 years? Like, what is that vision that you have?
Yeah. So, in I'll be honest, my drive and my goal is to improve patient outcomes and to see the first bit of longevity medicine start to make it to patients. And so we picked this target market really strategically and really carefully. And the reason of that is that we'll start to see the effect on patients in the near term, right? Like these patients, nearly 100% of them get this indication that we're targeting. Yeah. But then you look at the region that someone gets radiation, they're more likely to get skin cancer there later, right? Like the DNA damage accrues over time as the radiation passes through. And so what we'll be seeing, in 3 years, I want to have something that's helping patients like while they're going through treatment. In 5 years, I want to have seen those patients have a lower risk of skin cancer than patients who didn't get our therapy. And start be talking about, we've shown efficacy at this really acute targeted need. Let's start talking big picture. I joke about this on another podcast, but, Elon Musk could get people to Mars today from an engineering perspective. But the truth is, because of the radiation that they receive while in space, they would get to Mars sick and they may not come back. Ours is the
Wow.
therapy that's going to someday let people go out there, live long term safely up in space. And so, that's where I see it someday. But I got to
But
focus on what's going to provide return in the next 3 years.
wait, that last line got me. Our product is helping people breathe better in space. That is an insane line to say. Like, if
Yeah,
that was like part of your elevator pitch or something, that would catch a lot of people's attention for sure.
I mean, like, the reality is that's where we're pointed, right? Like, and thanks for that note, because I do deploy it for the right sort of folks, but I also am careful that not everyone cares about the 20-year vision of getting folks up there and getting a presence out of orbit. So,
Yeah.
but it's something that I'm passionate about.
Yeah, man. I'm super excited for you. I know this is going to go very well. Ben, what type of investors do you want to connect with? I want to make sure I can connect you with the right investors
Yeah,
that have been a part of Next Round Ready.
yeah. So right now we're looking for angels that are excited about, aviation and space medicine, longevity medicine, cancer care. Primarily, we're talking to angels right now. So people that, all accept safes, probably down to about 50K, up to, a couple hundred is the kind of bandwidth that we operate on, trying to fill out the rest of this round. I want folks that are going to be with me for the long term. You know,
Yes.
yeah, you can tell I'm really big about not just thinking about the next year, but thinking about the next 3, 5, 10 years, because that's where the applications are. I want investors that are going to be with me for that haul.
Yes, I love
Yeah.
that. The ones who will support you outside of just the money.
Yeah.
Man, Ben, this was incredible. I'm super excited for you. Thanks again for being such a great guest.
Thanks, Chris, for having me on. This was so much fun, and I'm looking forward to chatting more and having more good news in the future.